Hi everyone and welcome back to another video. Today's card is made for my favorite things, Camp Create Day 1's Q Wonderful Watercolors. So I've started with a piece of watercolor paper and an old die cutting plate. It's just too rough to use virtual die cutting now, so I use it as a base. Now I'm using some cheap masking tape, basically like working man's painter masking tape type thing, to tape my panel down onto the die cut panel. The reason you saw my leg in there as well is because it's really quite sort of tacky, this tape. So to make it stick a little bit less and hopefully lesser the risk of my paper ripping when I take it off, I dab it onto whatever clothing I'm wearing and then I add it to my panel. Now, as you can see, I've gotten my Gansai Tambi watercolors out and I'm prepping my panel by getting it nice and wet. This is Archer's hot pressed paper. I'm not sure exactly what kind other than that. I will perhaps get back to you on that. Now, I'm really not so good at the whole galaxy painting thing, but I figured, hey, give it a go, see what happens. And as usual with watercoloring, it tends to, in the beginning, look a bit like a 2-year-old is just splattering paint kind of wildly all over the thing. But just hang in there, everything tends to look very different once it's actually dry. So I started with my lightest color, yellow, and made a couple of kind of supernova things. And I've added some red and also purple. And I will eventually finish off with blues and a little bit of black to kind of frame the whole galaxy thing. Now, I'm really not the best at these things. I just kind of dabble away and hope for the best. And more panels than not tend to not end up being used in the end. However, it is fun to just kind of see what happens. And sometimes, you're lucky and it ends up really quite great and you can use it. And other times, it's just paper, right? That's our mantra for today. It's just paper. Now, one of these blues is really, really, really lovely. But again, I know I'm a blue kind of girl. I love all blues. But I'm just kind of swirling it in and tapping lots of water to make sure that the colors not blend exactly, but don't just look like they have been slapped on there without any sort of thought. Even though that is actually what I'm doing. I know, it's a juxtaposition of crafting. Anyway, good God, I blabber, don't I? Good thing you're here for some of the jibber jabbering as well, isn't it? Right. Not really much else to say about this. Just kind of watch it as you go along, and I'll tell you what. I will tell you a little bit more about this Camp Create instead. Now, unfortunately, it is already at the time of filming, the 24th. So the due date for all these projects is tomorrow. Now, it's 5 days of different techniques, and you can go onto My Favorite Things Stamps, MFT Stamps website, which is quite conveniently mftstamps.com. Click on the blog, and it will give you all the details. There are also videos for each day, so you kind of just get a little bit of inspiration and get your mojo flowing. Now, as I said, this one for today, the Q is Wonderful Watercolors, hence this background. But we are going to finish it off with some other little bits and pieces as well. But we're not quite there with the coloring just yet. However, I think roundabout soonish now we will be finishing it off. But I am dabbing up a little bit of the excess water around the edges to hopefully stop some of the bleeding underneath the tape. Although it didn't work in all the places, but it helped somewhat. Now, I'm also getting my glue gun out to dry this off a little bit to sort of see where it needs a little bit more water and where maybe I need to add a little bit more color. In the end, I didn't actually end up adding any more color once I put my paintbrush down for the end, but I did spray a little bit more water, strangely, even though I just mopped up a whole load of it. Now, there comes the glue gun, and this bit is going to be sped up. However, you can kind of see that once you add the heat, the colors don't exactly fade, but they are not as vibrant anymore. So even though it looks super, super dark and opaque in some places, it's not actually going to end up being as kind of ominous looking as it is right now. There you go. Right, and to add a little bit of shimmer, because who doesn't like shimmer, I've also got my Starry Night, Starry Colors even, palette out, and I'm adding a little bit of water directly into my pan of the blue gold, and this I'm going to splatter quite generously over my panel. Sorry, I got sniffles as well, didn't mean to sniff in your ear. And we're also going to add a little bit of a white. Now I thought that this was going to work out. I added a little bit of white acrylic paint onto a tile, and I thought, oh, I can probably splatter this. That did not really work out very well because it gave kind of very, very fine mist of splatters. So I ended up going in the end and using a paintbrush and dabbing a big sort of Milky Way of stars and dots all over this panel. Here I am still trying to add more interest and texture, but as you can see, this kind of like really, really fine little splatters there, but it just wasn't enough. So I thought, let's bring out the big guns, eh? And what I've done as well is I've gone all the way along the sort of edges to kind of bring the Milky Way into the panel, because also the darkest bits are around the edges of this panel. And you'll also see my head because I got in a little bit too close and trying to sort of look at all the patterns and stuff. So it gives that big old blob of a head. And here we are, a little bit later, lots of dots, still going strong, but we are nearly there. So what we're gonna, I say we, well, you know what I mean. What I did after this was I got a stamp set out, which unfortunately I've come to realize is discontinued, which is such a shame because I really like it. It's called Written in the Stars, and he also has had a coordinating dynamic called Shining Stars. You might be able to find these in some of the other shops, the stock MFT stuff. However, it's not available from the actual MFT Stamps web shop anymore. What I've done as well is I've cut out the stars with gold and black cardstock, and I wasn't quite sure exactly what sentiment I was going to use to begin with, so I cut out both star and stars and layered these both up with a liquid adhesive. This one is from Lawn Fawn and it's just called Glue Tube. The stars, I've done exactly the same thing. I've done the black in the background and the gold on top to kind of just give it a little bit of a shadow. And good friends are like stars. You don't always see them, but you know that they're there. Sorry, there's a car going past outside my house as well. So lots of noises that we don't need today. But there you go. Such is life. Now I've gone over my black cardstock with my anti-static tool. And as you can see, I'm very much a big fan of the cushion type thing to just really get everything covered and, get it done in one go. And I've layered the stamp sets up in my MISTI, and then we're just going to close the lid, pick up the stamps, and then we're going to stamp these with Versamark ink. Versamark ink is really great stuff. It's oil based instead of like water or dye ink based, so it stays wet for a bit longer. So you shouldn't need to stamp it more than once in order to get enough embossing powder on there. And look, it looks good enough without actually heating embossing it, but after heating embossing it and setting it aside and cutting also the Good Friends Alike bit out with another dynamic. This one is called, I think, Essentials Fishtail sentiment banners. Very long name for a very tiny little die cut. However, we're lining all these bits and pieces up on the cards, and I have also used a acrylic block to hold the stamp, the stars bit down a little bit to make sure that all the little bits and pieces are drying flatly. And as a final little, I say little, big addition on this card, I also added lots of Nuvo glow drops. These ones are called Banana Split, and they glow in the dark. It is so fun. Yeah. It's just one of those like little things you think, oh, it's probably not going to make that much of a difference, but when you then see it in the dark, and I will show you some pictures towards the end of this video, it's really quite a fun little feature. The only downside is that don't glow for very long. However, you know, you're not going to be sitting there sort of looking at the cards for hours and hours on end, are you? As always, I have used some affiliate links to link all the products that I've used for this card. Affiliate links don't cost you anything extra whatsoever. However, they will help me with the cost of running this little channel and my blog and my hoarding. So thank you so much for stopping by today, and I hope you enjoyed this card. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe!